Welcome to the only podcast about made-up dragons stealing made-up ideas from made-up fantasy role players. My name is Andrew Hornbeck.
And I'm Foster Grant. Today, we are delving into the depths of the Dragon's Lair, looking for lost treasures submitted by you, the listener.
Shh! He's right there. Today, we devote a little extra time to answering our very first email. We also discuss what makes a memorable RPG item, as well as answer your questions from Reddit.
Grab your bags of holding. This is the Dragon's Hoard.
So, Foster, the last time we left off, we were hovering over the Silent Forest, aka the Forest of Silence, aka the place with the rotunda and all those snakes. As a geyser shot up, you are floating above this beautiful lush forest on the back of your trusty bipedal steed, Butternut. And you saw the dragon with all of those questions, comments, and stories flying off. And you were in hot pursuit. We find ourselves today in a quaint town. And you have received a tip-off that somewhere in this town there is a soothsayer
I love soothsayers.
that knows exactly where this dragon is.
Well, we are... First off, we're going to take a break. Honestly, we've been going at it for a couple days now.
I thought you meant in the podcast. We literally started recording 5 minutes ago. We did our sound test, and then you need a break.
You know, Andrew, it's been a hard day.
It's been real rough on you. You can take a break. Where are you going to take a break?
Thank you. Join us next week.
Next week on the Dragon's Hoard. We actually
Foster
talk
and
about
Butternut. Wake up.
Where are we going to take a break at?
We're going to find our local tavern, and we're going to go, and we're going to take a nap. Just at the bar.
You ask
Me and my bipedal horse.
You realize that this town, they have a 0 horse policy. As soon as you cross the threshold of this town's border, it is completely and utterly illegal to possess a horse.
It's a good thing I do not own Butternut.
Well, it is all
owns me.
All right. Well, then you're about to have one less master because they will execute this horse on sight. What are you going to do about that?
Personally, I am going to cry a little bit on the inside at this ultimatum I've been presented with. And I'm going to look at Butternut. Did we decide what gender Butternut was?
I said in the first episode, I said he 3 times. I also said she 3 times. So,
Butternut,
I think she's
my multi-gendered horse.
Oh, very progressive horse.
I'm going to look Shem in the eyes, and I'm going to rub her mane and scratch his chin. And I'm going to be like, Butternut, I'll be right back.
Yeah, have a good run.
I'm going to leave Butternut at the
If you don't feel comfortable, I will let you try to disguise your horse as a person.
Oh, then why didn't you just let me say that?
He, she does
Why didn't you
walk
let
on
me
2 horses. He, she does walk on 2 horsey legs. So, she's easier to pass off as not a horse than most horses.
It is her front 2 legs that are still intact.
Oh, so she can be disguised as someone walking on their hands.
Or
not at all.
Yeah, or we could. No,
Okay.
I think I'm gonna take my extra fabrics that I have, my bed mat, my bedroll. I'm gonna wrap it around Butternut. I'm going to shear some of the hair off of my head. Give Butternut a nice mustache on her butt, I guess.
Yeah. Yep.
And we're gonna go. We're gonna go for it. We're going to get some drinks.
I need you to roll a disguise check, Foster. You know how this goes.
Here goes nothing. Ooh, that was. I rolled an 8.
Oh. It's not very good. But you better be glad that Butternut has a plus 15 to her disguise check.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, no, she did some like local like actors theater stuff. So it's not great. It's not by any means, she's not going to be going and like painting the town red, going to like an Oscar, but she might win like a local film festival award or something.
Well, then that'll do, baby. That'll do. We got
right.
23.
You take your 23 and you look at your horse, and it just, you yourself begin to wonder if Butternut is actually a horse, because this disguise is so well crafted. It has fooled you, the person who has made the disguise. And you walk into town, and people are turning their heads and commenting and saying, that fellow over there has a very nice mustache. You even have a man approach you and ask you how your companion has managed to procure such a finely fashioned facial hair.
And I tell him
something.
I turn to him and I tell him, it's all about trusting the process.
Yeah.
If you have to shave it so it can get a little thicker, sometimes that's just what you gotta do.
Mm-hmm.
But be patient. You can't do anything if you got, a centimeter of hair on your face. You gotta let that thing grow so you can groom it the way you want it to be.
He looks at you like this is what he's been waiting for his entire life. He starts to weep uncontrollably, and he puts 4 gold coins in your hand.
I thank him, and I say, now go, my child.
Whenever he's he's prostrated at your feet, and when he stands up, you see he has now a full handlebar mustache that he is equally as surprised at seeing, and he strokes it gently and runs off, proclaiming the good news of his new mustache. You see, right actually beside that man, you see the local bar. Right there. You're already at the doorstep of the Luthier, the most famous watering hole in all of like a 10-mile radius. Which is, that's big. Unlike horseback, that's a big area. But on the front, there's a bouncer, man. There's a bouncer. He is not having it. He says, you can't get into the Luthier until you answer my riddle.
Mm-hmm. Well, I turn to Butternut and I say, we've got this.
Butternut, since you have fashioned the moustache upon their buttocks, she farts in reply. And the bouncer nods, surprisingly. And says, I'm going to ask you the same thing I ask everybody. As a version 5 D&D player, I'd like to know how to personalize my character better. I read Reddit pages of players with very cool and unique characters like wizards with custom spells, fighters and barbarians with custom weapons. I play a half-orc barbarian with an insatiable appetite for Hulk smashing things. How do I work with my DM to personalize my character more as I level up? And what are some tips in designing your own weapons? How do I create a weapon and determine the proper damage and range, etc.? Thanks, guys. That's from Brian Myers.
Well, Brian, that is quite the question, and you have quite the second personality inside you.
He says, everybody calls me Tony, but sometimes they also call me Brian Myers, and I got all these questions about role-playing.
Well, you came to the right 2 men. Me and Butternut. So, when it comes to customizing a character and, make it your own, like you said, it sounds like he's got a pretty awesome idea already. A barbarian who's, it's Hulk-esque and smashing things and just wants to be the kind of guy who just goes around destroying things. Probably, obviously, like a tank-type character. Going to be taking a lot of damage, but wants to be able to be destructive.
And putting out a lot of damage.
Definitely.
Barbarian.
Yeah. I definitely think when it comes to that, just a lot of these weapons and stuff you see, it's gonna be a homebrew. It's gonna be them working with their DM and seeing how far their DM is gonna let them go. I mean, honestly, you could be as creative as you want to be, but you're gonna have to find someone who's willing to let you play with that character. Mm-hmm. So you gotta work with your DM a little bit.
His question was, how do they work with their DM to make their, I think he said half-orc barbarian, how to customize them more? What would be, as a player, how would you approach, I'm your DM,
right?
So how would you approach me if you said, like, hey, Andrew, I don't feel like my ninja is quite what he could be. I want to try to make him a little bit more, like, customizable, a little bit more how I am envisioning him. How would you approach that?
Well, as of now, most of the customizing I have done has just honestly been scrolling through different feats on the feats list, looking at just different things that you can, pick and choose here. And that's how I haven't really come to you wanting a homebrew way. But if I was going to do that, I'd be like, Andrew, this is where Scott is. This is where my ninja is. This is where I want him to be. And then I'm going to be like, all right, so he can run at 300 feet right now. Like, that's his turn movement.
I very well may censor out every single time you mention that he can run at 300 feet. Sorry, continue.
As long as we don't get the explicit tag.
Yeah.
So every time, if I say I want to go faster, I want to be, Scott wants to just dedicate himself to going faster. I'm like, Andrew, let's push this. Let's go. What am I going to have to do to get to 600 feet? To completely double that. So I would, see like, all right, so I'm going to, instead of taking the next level up, instead of taking my skill points, maybe could I add that to some speed? Could I add that to some thing like that? Or maybe even saying, hey, instead of taking my hit dice kind of thing, I'll be like, this is what I'm willing to barter. It's almost kind of like a trade off and on. I think that's how I would personally approach it.
And I think that's good too. If DMs are anything, they have an ego that likes to be stroked a little bit. You wouldn't be playing as the DM if you didn't like people appreciating things that you create. So if your DM is worth his salt or her salt, they're going to be willing to work with you on customizing your character, because if the characters are good, then the game is good. And that's, if they're DMing, they already know that that's the point of the game. So I completely agree. Turn it into a bartering game. Your DM already enjoys bartering, I'm sure, because whether he's bartering with life and death of the characters or he's bartering actual like money and items or goods and services in game, that's going to be thematically familiar, but it's also going to be socially something that you both have something to gain. The DM doesn't feel like they're breaking a system, and then you get to be more customized. I would just like to add in there that don't get nitpicky with a DM. In any experience that I have had where you try to argue rules with a DM, the DM's going to pull rule 0 out of their pocket and say, oh, well, I thought DM was God. And then they show you that, they sit you down, and they say, and now you shut up. So don't argue, try not to be nitpicky. You can definitely turn that into something to where it's win-win for both of you. Your DM feels like they are giving their player something they want. You feel like you're getting to customize your character and turn them into something that is closer to what you envision without having to split hairs with anybody. So using the method of, hey, I'll take not rolling for hit points this whole level if you give me another 30 feet of mobility. He also mentions weapons, which is sort of what I am gravitating towards in this question. Mm-hmm. Let's merge these two questions. You say weapons. I think as a DM, weapons are never just weapons. Weapons should be a facet of the character. That's foreshadowing to today's topic. But the weapon should be a facet of the character. Let's take theoretically this half-orc barbarian. He wants to Hulk smash everything. He wants to make sure anything that is standing above an inch tall is level to the ground. Talk to the DM and say, I am heading in this trajectory. I want my character to be just this brutish, hulking mass of destruction. How can I get that way? And I guarantee your DM is going to say, well, why don't you pick up some feats like this and that and that? And then you just start subtly planting ideas into the brain of the DM. Like, man, I saw this awesome thing on this, that, and the other of this weapon that does this. Say, I would love to have a weapon like that. And you would be really surprised at like how on the nose you can be with stuff like that. And your DM will just, all right, like, okay, you can have that. Like, I remember our sorceress in the campaign that we're currently playing. She was saying that she feels like she wasn't doing as good with her spells, and she didn't feel like she was contributing in combat with her spells. So I start carefully and thematically placing items and magical scrolls and this and that and the other, and then you tailor not just the items, but you're sort of cultivating the world around you, the character's experiences, and your own desires of how you want the storyline to go on, purely by making items. So you can mention that to your DM, and you can be frank and say, hey, this item would be super cool if it made me be able to be stronger. Something like
an amulet.
Yeah, an amulet. Or he mentions weapons. Immediately, whenever I think of Barbarian and Hulk Smash, I think Warhammer. Like, you could say, I heard of this, and this would get to me. So I can only speak from the DM's perspective. So if a player came to me and they're like, hey, I heard of this mythical Warhammer that can level a town whenever it's brought down upon the earth with enough force, and I'm going to make it my sole quest to find the mythical Warhammer. If I was your DM, I would derail the whole storyline and be like, we gotta find this mythical Warhammer. Yeah, no, play to your DM's interest. It should be a win for them too, as much as it's a win for you to get to play a character that you want. I talked for a really long time.
And that's okay, Andrew. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially when it comes to stuff like that, your DM is gonna love the creativity you bring to the table, because a lot of times worlds are their creation, and anytime that you can have something like that and you see other people invested in it enough to want to bring their own creativity to the table, that's just going to make the DM happy, and you guys are, like Andrew said, it's going to be a win-win for both of you.
The best role-playing games are played cooperatively. If your DM is the only person that's creating anything of interest, then it's probably a dull game. But if your players are also crafting interesting story hooks or items or encounters or likes, even something as small as like likes and dislikes, things that they, my character hates the smell of garlic. That's an interesting thing that your DM may prod. Anytime that you are throwing your creative lot into the hat, your DM will appreciate that. So I would say throw in your creative 2 cents. If you want to turn that into, you want to Hulk smash and you're a barbarian, say that your tribe has this legend of, again, like the mythical Warhammer thing. For me, that appeals to me as a DM. Every DM is going to be a little bit different though. So I really like lore. Lore is really interesting to me, as noted by all of the text that I send you guys. Like, I have a handbook for my current campaign because I think lore is so cool. But if your DM is a little bit more off the cuff and off the actual text, and they're off the books, then that's going to be a little bit more nuanced, and I don't think I can accurately answer that question. Yes.
All right.
Cool.
Cool beans.
You know who that's also cool with? Tony the Bouncer, a.k.a. Brian Myers.
Well, Tony, a.k.a. Brian Myers, that is your answer.
Hey man, I can't wait to go back and tell my DM that I don't want to talk like this anymore.
You live in a dumpster?
Yeah, I live in a dumpster.
And then he runs off and hops into his dumpster. You can see that there's a group of role players inside said dumpster. You can hear a muffled,
"Hey, I found this Warhammer and I really want to do stuff with it."
The door's wide open. You're ready to go into the Luthier.
We take a breath of air right outside, and then we step in and smell just the atmosphere of this tavern, of this renowned, for 10 mile radius, renowned bar.
Well, I'm glad that you did that, because the Luthier is known for its fine crafted ales and also for its fine woodworking. So you get this rich aroma of beers and ales and lagers, but also this smell of like wood, pine, and cherry, and it's an interesting bouquet that swirls around the room. It's nice, polished tables. All the woodworking is masterfully crafted. But something piques your interest. You see off in the corner, there is a woman dressed in sable. She has talismans and silver coins hanging from a headdress that she's wearing, and she has a packet of tarot cards strewn out in front of her. A man sitting at her table abruptly stands up, throws 2 copper pennies on the table, and says, "I'll be sure to take that advice." He gives her a thumbs up and walks out. She nods gracefully and takes the coins.
Well, I look to my comrade, Butternut, and I say, "Here's the money." I flip him the 4 gold coins. So you get the drinks, I'll get the info.
Butternut catches the coins skillfully in their hoof.
So Butternut, for all intents and purposes, now standing on 1 hoof and catching 4 coins.
Yes, exactly. I'm glad that I painted a word picture vividly enough for you to understand that this horse is now standing on 1.
Butternut, having also taking acrobatics at his local theater production, is just a sight to behold. I have another one of those massive elephant tears just well up in one of my eyes as I proudly look upon my best friend.
It's like watching your son at their first school recital, except the production value is much better. Butternut, like the trained acrobat that she is, hops off on 1 foot with the coins in their other hoof and slams them down on the counter. You see your equestrian child approach the counter and order the finest lager that is on their tap list. The bartender is fascinated by Butternut's very curious and elegantly fashioned mustache.
I approach the mysterious sable-clad woman and I sit down. I look her in the eyes and I say, I am on a quest to find the most interesting and the most awesome role-playing.
I know why you are here, Mr. Foster. You are here to find the most interesting role-playing items. Is that not correct?
Well, that is definitely part of why we...
It is exactly part of it. So I ask you, Mr. Foster, what makes a very cool role-playing item?
Well, a cool role-playing item is something that maybe is common. It could be... Alright, so I think there's two different ways to look at this. There's things that become cool from just experiences and encounters while in a game. And there's also things that you, like we talked about earlier, are creative enough to come up with to bring to your DM. Or maybe just something that they have brought to the table that's a homebrew thing that they find really cool. So going back to things that maybe have more meaning now that they've had some certain encounter, in our campaign, my trusty sword, Horsebane, is the greatest sword, the greatest rapier known to man. And it is solely because while we were traveling from the capital city in our world to a little podunk town, we were actually passing through, and goblins had taken control and they had laid all these traps out. And me, being a very observant horseback rider, got my horse's leg snapped in a bear trap. And so our party, got off our horses, quickly looked to tend to this horse's needs, and instead of using a magical potion, we try and do a heal check on a broken bone of a horse. Now, none of us being medically certified.
No points in heal checks.
No points
None.
in heal checks.
None.
We worsen the horse's condition. We do terrible. And so my character in that state of mind is like, let's just put this horse out of its misery. My character is not connected to nature or any of this kind of stuff. It's just, it's a horse. There's more horses. Let's put this one out of its misery. And so with a very pinpoint accurate, I calmed my horse down and I just mercy killed the horse. Now, other members of the party were not too happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
But, my character's not naturally inclined, so it's not a big deal. So, being now the bane of horses, my sword is now known as Horsebane.
Yeah, Horsebane gained its moniker from such an encounter. Horsebane was not meant to be like a really big part of your character's story until you gave it a name. And then I think, well, if it's good enough to have a name, it's good enough to have a story. And that's where a lot of cool items come from, is if it's good enough to waste a breath on, it should be good enough to actually be interesting or useful in some way. I'm not the kind of DM that shells out, you got 3 bundles of deer hide and now you need to make water skins out of it. That just seems really tedious. I'm not a shopper. I don't make you guys do that. I don't force you guys to do that because it's boring and I'd rather smith up a good item. So making a cool item, just like most things in role-playing, it needs to be player-centric. I think some of the best items that I have seen and I have made specifically focus on the character. They focus on you. Horsebane is iconic. I don't feel like that our campaign could be what it is now without Horsebane in it. Especially Scott could not be in this campaign without Horsebane. And then we have some other items, even like familiars. I feel like I have the same attitude on, as far as like making them very player tailored. I don't just throw items out at you guys. All the items that you have encountered have been very carefully crafted and specifically introduced at very particular moments.
Coming from a player's perspective, just seeing DMs willing to oh my god, that is just an amazing, hilarious moment. I'm gonna keep the ball rolling on that one. That should encourage players to be more role play sensitive and more into their character and just there to have a good time, because a lot of cool moments and cool things like this can just come out of that atmosphere of a good role playing experience. And then going on to also just items that your DM comes up with. We have a character. Well, we used to have a villainous character in our campaign, Peter Parchment, whom was this businessman who had all these little trinkets and these little absurdly useful magical doodahs. One being these little bitty intricate origami paper boats that when you unfold them turn into actual sized rowboats that you can use. And just things like that is just awesome because you see the depth of character that this guy has, or the depth of thinking about just random things, and your DM obviously knowing a semblance of a trajectory that the arcs are going to take you, knowing that this might be useful. Your character might never use it, but just seeing that kind of creativity is awesome because coming into a campaign and seeing the thought that your DM has put into it is just awesome.
And that's the big scale that you have to take as a DM, is what is going to be cool for you and what's going to be cool for your characters. And I feel like the nice intersection point between those two is, does it give the characters the spotlight? And stuff like the boats, which I'm actually really surprised that you mention, because I feel like that's not one of my more out there items that I've made before. Peter Parchment started off as just a paper salesman. He wound up being kind of crucial to the storyline, and he just had these paper note cards on him, and they may encounter water sometime. These note cards may be useful, sort of situation. I didn't know the end of the campaign at the time that I gave you those items, but again, the DM will have a very intimate perception of the attitudes and the actions of their players, and I knew that at some point there's probably going to be water involved, and this particular party loves getting stumped at very mundane instances. If it's a closed door, they're going to spend 40 minutes on maybe opening that door that's just a door. It's not anything. They act like the more mundane something is, the more hazardous that thing must be, which is a great way to think, actually, because there are some very cynical DMs. But a good item, instead of pointing to itself and being, hey, look how cool this item is, I am a +5 sword of poisoning and burning, and it kills anything it touches. That's actually really dumb. That's a really dumb item. It's useful, but again, like we talked in episode 1, useful is really subjective, and in this case, useful is really dumb. So a good item from a DM, a cool item, an item that I would deem worthy to put into my campaign, which I spend probably way too much time crafting, is an item that points to my characters. Whether it's a little piece of paper that I can fold out and get across a obstacle more easily, or it's something like Horsebane, which at this point can cut through dimensions and suck people into the shadow plane. Whether it's, it's something really crazy like that, or it's a little piece of paper, any items that I introduce always point back to my characters, because my characters are the star, and by my characters, I mean my players' characters.
Any items that encourage characters to work together. There's been items which personally I feel are well underused. The combo of the Mask of Pazuzu and the cruel sword that was really just a collarbone of a Pazuzu bird worshipper that two of our characters have.
I'll give some just so for people that are more rules minded and stuff. The mask casts fear, and then the sword that he mentioned, whenever a creature is shaken, it makes them sickened if they're hit by the sword. So it's meant to be a combo. You're right. Did we use that combo once?
We have used it one time, but the person who had the sword failed the roll, put the sword away, and got something else out.
Oh my gosh, that was our sorceress. Yeah, she got rid of the sword. You're right.
But stuff like that is, it comes and goes. You can't be too butthurt over it. But just items like those definitely encourage the working together of two characters. Maybe even two characters who, say you have a larger party, two characters who don't really work together often, or maybe are at button heads with each other a little bit. That's one way for you to kind of meld your party together a little bit, or just make two polar opposites have to work together a little bit. They have two things that combo well together. So in order to beat maybe a big villain, they're going to have to work together a little bit using the items that you've given them.
Yeah, cool items, whenever you boil it down, is an item that encourages roleplay. An item that doesn't encourage more combat, because more combat may not be conducive to role-playing. It's a role-playing game. If you want a combat game, play Call of Duty. Don't play role-playing games like D&D or Pathfinder or Shadowrun or Call of Cthulhu. You need to encourage your group to develop instead of just now go kill things with this super cool sword. Because you may think it's super cool, but I guarantee you if you have a party over one, every single idea that you throw out isn't going to be the coolest idea. I've played with parties as big as 8. I've played with parties as small as 2. And I will say that the similarities between parties of 2 and parties of 8, they converge at, maybe not liking all of your ideas. You're always going to have one person in a group that isn't going to think this encounter is as cool as a previous encounter or a future encounter that they may have. And items should encourage roleplay, in my opinion. You can disagree with that. I'm sure, actually, I would be willing to bet that a lot of players would disagree with that.
Yeah, I could see that too, where characters are more of, my items are supposed to be what help me do things, or my items are supposed to be, in a semblance, almost who I am. Because I could definitely let Horsebane define Scott in being that without Horsebane, without being able to use that magical power, Scott's just someone who runs fast. But being able to see that as Horsebane is like this darker side of what Scott could possibly become, the internal battle between Scott using it, because when he's been able to use it, he's seeing glimpses of his past, of his family whom he's lost, so that drives him into combat. But knowing that he only gets that for such a short time, is it worth the risk of continuously fighting in order to see his family? There's that kind of internal struggle there.
Horsebane is, in my mind, the alter ego of Scott. It can be a reminder of what may be lurking in the shadowy corners of Scott's past. And I feel like my best item out of this game is Horsebane. I love that, because it points, according to my definition, an item that encourages roleplay. I say, hey, that meets all of my standards. I love Horsebane. I think it's awesome. My verdict for what makes a cool item is any item that is character-centered or encourages roleplay between the group.
I also agree. I turn to this sable-clad woman, and I say, I believe we have just answered your question.
You are saying all of these things, and things are just foggy right now. Maybe they were foggy earlier or later. Who are you? That horse at the cat. That's a horse at the cat. There's a lot of... Where are you right now? You see in front of you is a devilish-looking creature with a deformed face and fangs. They are clad in human skin draped over them. And they have this crooked smile. And they say,
I am a servant of the dragon. And if you want to get his treasures, you're gonna have to go through me, Foster Grant. Foster Grant, who's shorn off his own hair to disguise his horse.
And this character points over to Horse. I meant to say the horse. Butternut's life may be hanging in the balance of this very moment. What are you gonna do?
I am going to turn to Butternut and say, "Flee."
You go to say that, nothing comes out of your mouth. You look in the hands of this, what looks like a demonic figure, and it looks like they have cast some kind of incantation as magical sparks slowly trickle out of their hands. You have been cursed in some way. Butternut cannot hear you.
But Butternut can see me. So I give her our standard runaway, we're screwed, hand maneuvers, and we're looking to the door.
Butternut sees that. Butternut and you have been preparing for this kind of moment probably since you were birthed. You give those maneuvers. Butternut mimics those maneuvers, but with hooves. It's a lot less precise. Especially since a lot of these maneuvers require you to have fingers, which, that's bad foresight on your part, but that's alright. Butternut mimics those back. She also signs back to you a message of her own. She says, "I think we can take this guy out."
With the now found confidence of my equestrian child, I turn, I draw my sword, and I charge.
You charge this beast, and it's hard. It's hard to work yourself out of this curse that you've been placed under. But Butternut runs to your side and is willing to aid you in any way that they can. You take a slash at this figure, and they dissipate into gray clouds of smoke. But on the ground, you notice a very cool item. What is that item there, Foster Grant?
The item that we have just procured from this little encounter is none other than the Stalker's Mask.
Do you care to tell us about the Stalker's Mask there, Foster?
Preserved sections, harvested from several different human faces, cover this mask. When worn, the mask desaturates the wearer's color, making him appear shadowy and having people not remember what he looks like. This is an amazing item, which I find just to be awesome. Because one, it's a freaking mask made out of the severed remains of other humans' faces.
It's so vivid. You can see it in your brain. Oh, it's so good.
Okay, so this is our item spotlight
Yes.
that we would like to introduce to you all. This is where we're just going to come and present items that we find just awesome.
Or you present. If
Yes.
you send us items and it is cool enough, we will 100% make sure it shows up on the Dragon's Horde.
Definitely. So, what this item does is it grants you a 5% competence bonus on all your stealth checks. So, just wearing this mask makes people not really be able to discern you from a crowd. You're able to just meander through maybe somewhere you're not supposed to be. You got 5+ competence bonus on stealth checks. So, you're able to just kind of get to that cellar, get down to that cave, get into the backside of this business that no one wants you to be at. This is what you're going to be wanting to wear. And also, this mask allows for you to not be remembered, like your face. You're wearing this mask, you're walking through, the bartender spots you, and then later on you're in the back of the store, the bartender sees you again, they're going to have to make a roll on not a roll per se, but
they may have to do like a perception.
like a perception roll. But you have a +10 bonus to a perception roll against them remembering your visage, your appearance. And also, once per day, as a full round action, the wearer can cause the mask's features to take on the appearance of any creature the wearer's basic size and shape within 60 feet that he observes. So, you're in a crowd. Someone's looking for someone, or that this person, he's got a reputation that you can use to maybe get to where he's at. You see him, boom, you are him.
that's so vivid, and you can implement that in so many different ways. It's like the spell Disguise Self. That's where my brain immediately goes to. But then after that, it trails off into the lovely images of a halfling, a sweet pacifist halfling, wearing the severed faces of another person just so they can get through disguise checks. I love that as our first item spotlight, is because it's vivid, it points towards characters, it points towards building up a personality. I love that. That's so cool. Thank you so much for finding that item, Foster, laying on the ground of the Luthier.
And we are going to tuck that away, and we're going to keep that handy for our next encounter with this dragon.
For sure. Which may be sooner than later, because underneath of the mask is runes charred into the wooden floor that have sort of an ominous message. They say,
"You will never find what you seek until you defeat me."
And then you also see underneath of that, perhaps the spell they used to carve this in didn't go through exactly correct. Like maybe the magical switchboard operator wasn't quite on their game, because underneath of that, it says, "Going to play my first game on Friday. I'm bringing some dice and using a player's handbook for my friend. Anything else I should bring? Buy the lowlife."
Well, the lowlife. Some things that, as a first-time player, I think will be useful. For me, being a first-time player just recently, things to bring are pencils. Obviously, you don't want to use pens. You're going to be erasing so much stuff. So, pencils. Also, I found that the use of sticky notes can actually be super useful. Say you pick up an item, you write it on the back side of your player's page, your character sheet, and you're in combat and you're looking through. You don't think about the item on the back side of your page. You look at the weapons you have, you look at your skills, and you're like, man, I wish I really had some smoke bombs right now. Bang. You do. They're on the back side of your page. So sometimes, I do this all the time, I forget to even look at that. I don't even have a back. I have 2 pages. It's not front back. It's 2 pages. I still forget to look at my item sheet.
If you had a fantasy tool belt and it should have these things on it, the question asker, the lowlife, has already gotten most of those things. Sticky notes are the redheaded stepchild of role-playing games, and I don't understand why. They are so... I use them... sometimes I use them like digitally. Like I have digitally inserted notes into things, but they work the same as sticky notes. Sometimes I use actual physical sticky notes because they're not permanent, they don't take up a lot of space, you can stack them, they travel easily. We should do a whole episode on sticky notes, man. They're so useful to player and DM alike. I would also say other things that you should bring if you aren't working with a character sheet that is 2 pages, because normally character sheets are 2 pages. Across most role-playing games, I find them to be 2 pages. There's some exceptions to that. I know Shadowrun, there's some character pages that are like 4, sometimes 5. I don't know how people keep up with that. But if you have a back sheet that's blank, then maybe you could supersede this rule. But I'm definitely the kind of person that loves taking down names of characters and places and items and ideas and stuff. We have a player that's in our campaign currently. She's a note taker sometimes. Maybe she should do that more often. But she's a note taker, and I applaud her for doing that, because there's been several instances where I've name dropped once. Then 5 sessions later, that name comes back up again, and the other players kind of gloss over that, but she comes up and is like, I have that name written down. She opens it up and finds it. It ends up being immensely useful. I say if you're the kind of person interested in lore and names and really getting into this world that has been crafted for you, I'd say bring a notebook, or at least bring some like scrap paper that you can write on, because you'd be surprised the usefulness of just writing down someone's name that may seem very inconsequential now, that may come back later and is very important. And if you come up to them and be like, whoa, we don't know who you are, they say, well, I'm the king of this province, and you should remember me, and then, everything falls apart. Maybe not that dramatic, but taking notes on something bigger than a sticky note is immensely useful. I have found that's why I like to. Whenever I played more, I loved keeping a notebook with me. If you go digital on most things, bring your iPad and just pop that right into your notes. I love that. I still do that anytime I get the chance to play, which isn't very often, but
Yeah, definitely just little things just to help you stay connected to it, as well as, I don't know, if you're playing long playthrough sessions and it's not the type of people who want to break to go for food and stuff like that, bring snacks. Just so simple. No one's going to care if you're chomping away on some chips while we're doing this because you're still at the table and you didn't leave to go grab a bite to eat.
yeah. A big thing with DMs that can get very frustrating is whenever outside influences take away from the immersion. So like if a TV is on, that's my big thing. That's my pet peeve that I don't know why TV has to be on in the room, because you're playing a game that requires a lot of listening, and TVs are always very distracting. But food is not one of those things, because a lot of times when people have food at the table, it's because they're still wanting to stay involved in the game. They do not want to leave, but they don't want their hunger to distract them. I didn't even think about food. That's a great point, Foster. That's great. Yeah, bring a snack, bring a drink, so if you're, of the legal age, maybe fun to have some alcohol involved in that. Loosen up the party and stuff. Bring food. Bring something to eat. We play sometimes like 6-hour sessions. You need a little snack sometime if you don't want to get up.
Yeah, definitely. That is a terrific question, The Low Life.
Yeah.
And we hope we, help to keep you more prepared.
Yeah, definitely. Good luck on your first game this Friday. We really hope that you enjoyed, and we hope that maybe our advice helped you be just a little bit more prepared for the adventure that's in store for you. You see that question inscribed on the ground above, kind of a threatening foreshadowing of maybe something very sinister going on, and directed at you, Foster. Butternut standing beside you. They are also reading this message, because as we all know, horses can understand glyphs inscribed on the ground. And Butternut looks over at you and kind of gives you a knowing look in their horsey eyes. And they say, I haven't told you everything about me, Foster. I've got something very important that needs to be said. Next time on the Dragon's Horde podcast. Thanks again for listening to the Dragon's Horde podcast.
If you want to submit any content or questions of your own, you can message us at thedragonshordecast@gmail.com or visit our Reddit page, The Dragon's Hordecast.
Or tweet at us at the Hordecast for a chance to star in a future adventure.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe and catch our podcast weekly on Tuesdays.
And make sure to rate us on iTunes so we can keep the adventure going.